All right, guys, our next guest is known for his excellent analysis as well as his fun commentary style. A former fighter himself, now UFC colored commentator of Fox analyst. He's here to help us preview UFC 220. Hey, Jimmy Smith, welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you today? It's great to have you on the program, man.
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Pleasure is all ours, man. We always appreciate when you come on. And last time you came on, we kicked off the discussion talking about weight cutting, so I feel like it's only tradition to do the same thing. Obviously, before we talk about the fight itself, there's the question of whether Darren Till makes the weight. What do you think about having such an important place on the title being defended, sort of regardless who it's against, that you've got Kamaru Usman there as a backup just in case? And do you sort of feel like it may be a little bit unfair to the champion to possibly have an opponent switch on 24 hours notice? And does it kind of muddy the waters as far as what it means to be a number one contender / title challenger?
I mean, that's tough. I mean, I understand why they have Kamaru Usman as a backup, but as far as I know, there's no way they can enforce Kamaru Usman fighting. I mean, if Darren Till doesn't make weight and Tyron Woodley elects not to fight him, I don't know if there's anything they can do. I don't know how his contract written up. I don't know how the commission sees it. I have no idea. So it's really an X factor in this fight. Darren Till pretty much has to make weight for this to work. And if he doesn't, then it muddies absolutely everything.
If you're sort of looking at it from the UFC's perspective and also the punishment perspective, if Darren Till did miss weight, what would you like to see happen? Would you like to still see him have a shot at fighting Woodley, even though it's minus the title? Or do you think it's only right that maybe he gets punished and misses out of this opportunity to fight?
Well, you can punish somebody and they can miss out, but then the fans miss out on a fight. The issue that they have is, from that perspective, is it's all on the will of Tyron Woodley. If Tyron Woodley doesn't want to fight somebody who didn't make weight, he does not have to. That's that's kind of the way it works. It's kind of the ball would be in his court, and I would understand completely why you wouldn't want to take a dangerous fight against a guy who has knockout power and didn't make weight. So it would just be, there are no good solutions. I mean, we can come up with a ton of solutions about, hey, he'll fight Kamaru Usman or something like that, but there's no good solution. I mean, the guys have to make weight at this level.
Yeah, it's really funny because so Woodley went out and he said, I'm not going to fight Usman. I'm going to fight Darren Till even if he misses weight. But I'm wondering, it kind of sounded to us like when we heard it that it's almost like the UFC never really spoke to Woodley about the fact that, hey, we've got this Usman guy in the background here and we're going to get him to prepare for this fight, because here you have the champ saying under no circumstances I'm going to fight Usman. And now when you're Usman, you're like, well, why am I even here? If Woodley's not going to be fighting, why am I preparing? Why am I cutting weight? Why did the UFC make me a quote-unquote backup when the champion just said I'm not? What do you think of this whole sort of scenario? Are they on the same page? Did the UFC just sort of tell Usman and not Woodley? It just seems like there's been a break in communication.
Well, not only a break in communication. I mean, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know what's been discussed with who. But my point is, the athletic commissions, you can't have a caveat in your contract that if this guy doesn't make it, you have to fight this guy. You can't do that. Commissions don't allow that kind of contractual language, meaning when you sign a contract to fight somebody, it's to fight that specific person on this specific day at this specific weight. And if any of those terms are violated, you don't have to fight. They can't have one that says, if this guy doesn't make weight, you have to fight this guy. As far as I'm aware, and somebody in the commission could answer it better than I could, contracts like that aren't allowed. You can't do that. You can't switch an opponent on somebody in the last 24 hours and contractually force them to fight. You can't do that. So you would have to give them enough inducement. We'll give you double the money to fight this guy. Yeah, then you can do it. But you can't force them. That's the thing about weight cutting is you can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink. You can't make Tyron Woodley fight somebody else. You can't contractually legally do that. That's non-enforceable as far as the athletic commissions are concerned. And you can't make somebody make weight. If they don't make it, they don't make it. You can't legally tell them to get back in the sauna and cut. You can't do that. So that's the problem is the weight cutting issue is the imperfect storm. It's the eye of like a shit tornado, because the problem is all this stuff comes together at the same time. You can't make somebody fight someone else. You can't do that. They are contracted to fight this guy on this date at this weight. And if they don't make it, that's not their problem. You can't force a guy to cut the last few pounds in the sauna. You can't do that. No commission is going to allow you to push a guy into a sauna and lock him in there. So that's the problem with this whole scenario. And, people talk about, monitoring somebody leading up to a fight and all this stuff. I talked to people that monitored Yoel Romero, not this cut, but the one I called in Perth. And they said he looked fine. He looked great. Everything was looking good right up until that point. That last 2 pounds or whatever it was just wouldn't come off. So, I've heard of guys who were in much worse shape than Yoel Romero in Perth making weight. They were able to cut that few pounds, and then he couldn't. So it's just tough because there's so many gray areas with this weight cutting thing.
And it's crazy because we've seen situations, and you're a fighter yourself, so you know this better than us, but we've seen situations with guys like Max Holloway and Khabib where you actually have very serious health issues where you can't keep cutting. And this is not something that you can always predict, where maybe an organ starts getting damaged, maybe there's something inside that you got to stop, you got to go to the doctor, you got to figure things out. But I suppose when you look at a guy like Darren Till, who had a very bad cut last time, he's very, very big for the division. Do you think the UFC sort of are taking a big risk here in the regards that if Darren Till is cutting weight and something crazy happens in the sense of a Max Holloway or a Khabib where he can't fight and he can't keep cutting weight, they're stuck with this Usman-Woodley fight, and Woodley's already sort of said, I don't really want to fight this guy.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they're taking a big risk on a guy who didn't make weight last time, who has history of being big for the division, didn't make weight last time. So, yeah, it's a big risk putting a guy like this in a title fight. Big risk. And so they've taken that jump. And one thing that's really important to keep in mind, guys, in my day, a dozen years ago, Diego Sanchez was a decently sized middleweight. Guys didn't cut dude, I'm not kidding. He was a decent sized middleweight when I saw him. He fought at King of the Cage. I remember seeing Diego Sanchez fight at 185, and he was big. He wasn't considered a small 185er. This guy got down to 145 effing pounds. Yeah. Guys are cutting everybody in my day, in when I was fighting, is literally at least one weight class too big. At least. I mean, if you meet Frank Shamrock's not a big welterweight. That guy fought at 198 pounds. He fought Tito. It's insane. Yeah. The sizes were just different, guys. Pat Miletich is not even a big 55er today. And he was the 170-pound champ. That guy's a legend. And, he couldn't beat a decent-sized 55er today, size-wise. So that's one thing that's really changed in the last 10 years or so, is guys are cutting weight that was unfathomable 10 years ago. They're just really walking the razor's edge.
I guess what's interesting about this fight is you've got Darren Till, who's sort of accustomed to normally training at home, here for the biggest fight of his life. He's gone over to the UFC PI, which theoretically is excellent. But I imagine for a fighter, it's a bit weird of a transition to sort of be in a completely different surroundings, different routine. I know you sort of don't, and he sort of admitted when he was doing a media scrum that, yeah, he's a little bit over this camp, because unlike at home, you can't just go home, relax, forget about training. It's 24 hours, media obligations, this, that. I know you sort of don't have a crystal ball, and neither does anyone, but what are you expecting from this weight cut? As a fighter, is there anything you've noticed that would sort of lead you in any direction into believing something?
One thing that's really important to keep in mind, really important, is fighters are tremendous liars. And
of course,
when it comes to the interviews and they said this and he said that, I'm like, yeah, he'll say anything, man. They're supposed to. I've had fighters that were, I feel great, I feel wonderful, that they got off camera and started limping. I've literally seen that with my own eyes. Guys that couldn't walk a flight of steps, who sat there in an interview and said it was the best camp of their life and they feel great. So always take all pre-fight talk with a grain of salt. Is change good another important thing to keep in mind when you're looking at Darren Till is this is really his third big dance, man. Cowboy put him on the map. Obviously, close fight against Wonderboy. Those were both at home. He's not used to the big lights, big fights, media obligations, doing all this stuff. So that's, one of the X factors in his fights is Tyron Woodley is used to these kind of fights. He's used to fighting everywhere. He's used to fighting as the champion. He's used to big fights. Darren Till really isn't. And how he handles that, people talk about interviews and this and that, and hey man, you wanted to be famous until you got famous, and now it's a pain in the ass. You deal with that all the time. Everybody wants attention. I want big fights. I want this. I want this guy. I want that guy. Guess what? You got to do a lot of interviews. You got to do a lot of media. You got to talk to a lot of people. You have to do photo shoots. And, you know, you want to be famous. This is famous. So how he adjusts to that might be big.
So when you look at Darren Till as a title challenger, what specifically about his game do you think could potentially give Tyron Woodley some problems here?
He's slick, but it's a short-range slick. Wonderboy Thompson's a slick fighter. Obviously, Tyron Woodley fought him twice, beat him once, got one draw. But he's more of a kicker. He's more of an outside guy. He's more of a range guy. Darren Till can knock you out from pretty short range. He has some nasty elbows. You can get in that grappler's range and be pretty close to him, and he'll throw off a combination that'll put you on your butt. You know, that's what he's great at. So it's kind of similar to a Wonderboy Thompson fight, except the range is different. He can hurt you from a lot closer. So that's the combination that's going to give Tyron Woodley problems.
And I was going to say that the height and reach, the crazy thing is you mentioned Wonderboy, stats-wise, and I'm sure you know this, they're pretty much the same reach, same height, but Darren just looks so much bigger. You know, and I think obviously the difference is how much he cuts and how much he puts back on. How effectively do you think Darren sort of can use that against Woodley? Because sort of I see some theories floating around that with Darren, because of his Muay Thai background, he's got some very good trips. If he can sort of keep Woodley scrambling, maybe use some of those trips, maybe even fire off some knees, it can sort of it can potentially wear on Woodley in the later rounds.
It certainly could, but I think the difference here is what he's able to do, because he's more of a puncher than a kicker. He's able to use his feet defensively and angle and circle a lot, so much the way Wonderboy did. But Wonderboy has to use his feet offensively as well as move around. Darren Till tends to use his hands a little bit more. Knees, trips, anything where you're getting into that clinch kind of range, that wrestling kind of range, that's where Till has to watch out. He doesn't want to get in a tripping, scrambling battle with a guy who's been grappling his entire life. Scrambling is what Tyron Woodley's been doing for years. So I don't think he wants to get in that kind of game. I think he wants to have a mid-range, throw a lot of punches, a lot of volume, give a guy like Tyron Woodley, who wants to come in and bang and wants to use his wrestling, a lot of landmines in that short and medium range. That's going to be the important part of his game to me.
It seems though Tyron's biggest threat on the feet is his overhand right. Against a striker of Till's caliber, though, how much success do you think Woodley might have with that overhand right? And if he can't land it, do you see him having any other tools on the feet that might come out during the fight?
The thing to me, this is a kind of a classic, if he does everything he knows how to do, he can win kind of fight for Tyron Woodley. He's a fantastic wrestler. He doesn't have a great overhand right, but it's his ability to mix it up and change it up and turn it into a grappling match and use his clinch work and all this stuff that he's able to do that make him so dangerous. If he decides to go out there and prove a point and kind of like, I've been overlooked and I've had time off and I'm going to starch this guy. If he decides to fight that way, that's exactly what Darren Till wants. And so if you're Tyron Woodley, you have a great overhand right. You've been wrestling a lot longer than you've been throwing punches. And so I think he'll be more effective with that overhand right when he catches Darren Till in a scramble, when he's taking him down a little bit and wearing him down, when he starts frustrating Darren Till, and Darren Till takes risks on the feet because he spent the first couple rounds on his butt getting hammered, then he might take a risk and run into an overhand right. I think that's the important part. If he tries to throw a naked overhand right and rely on his physical speed, which he has a lot of, it's way more dangerous than if he uses his other skills to set up that overhand right.
Yeah, and I was going to say the interesting thing about Darren Till is we saw a very aggressive version of him pretty much throughout most of his fights, except for that Wonderboy fight where he was a lot more measured and calculated. Do you expect that aggressive Darren Till to be back here against Tyron Woodley? Because typically Tyron, what do you think of the notion that Tyron sort of has a bit of a hard time against guys who push forward and who are very aggressive and sort of are always in his face and don't give him a chance to really breathe?
Yeah, I mean, I think we might see certainly a more aggressive Darren Till, simply because stylistically last time against Wonderboy, who's facing a guy who's very hard to look good against. It's very hard to be aggressive against. It's very, very hard to control range against him. So he fought a guy much like, in my opinion, like Damian Maia and Tyron Woodley. It's hard to look good against Damian Maia. Even if you beat him, you just don't look spectacular. He took a lot of criticism for that fight, but I remember watching it and thinking, well, it's Damian Maia. No one looks good against that guy. I mean, Anderson Silva, the greatest champion of all time, probably looked terrible. Had maybe the worst performance of his career against. I mean, he clearly won, but crowd's booing. It's hard to look good against Damian Maia. Wonderboy Thompson's kind of the same way. You can beat Wonderboy. You can do it. Tyron Woodley did it. Darren Till did it in the eyes of some people. It's hard to look good against that guy because he controls range so well. So I would kind of, you throw out the extremes when you're looking for averages. I would kind of throw that out as kind of an extreme example of a guy that's just hard to control range against. I think he'll be much more aggressive than that.
Well, looking at this fight, who are you sort of leaning towards? Who do you think might win this one, Jimmy?
There's so many X factors in this fight. I'm leaning toward Tyron Woodley simply because I tend to favor the guy who can do more, and he can do more than Darren Till. But long time off, feeling disrespected. I don't like the idea of Tyron Woodley going out and fighting an emotional fight. I think that would be death for him. So the way he's conducted himself before this fight, he seems a little emotional. He seems a little worked up. The haters, I'm going to show them and everybody. I don't like that kind of language because I don't think he wants to go out there and pardon my language, measure dicks and go, I'm going to knock you out. I'm going to knock you out. I'm serious. I don't like the idea that he's going to go out there and go, I'm going to knock you out. I'm going to knock you out and trade with the guy. I don't like the idea that he might walk in emotional. Tactically, and with his skill set, even with the time off, I think he has all the tools to beat Darren Till. If he goes in there emotionally trying to prove a point with a banger with great reach, that's a recipe for disaster. So in a sense, I'm leaning toward Tyron Woodley. I think it's his to lose. If he goes out and fights the wrong kind of way, he could give it up and get knocked out.
Jimmy, appreciate time, man. We'll let you go shortly. And just quickly, speaking of measuring dicks, this is Australia. I hear you censoring yourself during this interview. You can say whatever you like. I want you to feel comfortable.
Love it.
But obviously, we've got to touch on Nicco Montano versus Valentina Shevchenko in the co-main. A lot of people see Valentina as the uncrowned champion at 125. We've seen Montano leave a lot of openings when she strikes, and she's obviously pulled a lot of upsets, but we know how good Valentina is on the feet. How do you think Nicco stacks up against Valentina?
Terribly. I really
appreciate the honesty.
Honestly think I think it's a tactical nightmare for Montana, simply because she's 4-2. She doesn't have a ton of experience to draw on. Roxanne Modafferi, who was, a lot of people forget, was a last-minute replacement for that fight, is the biggest name of her career. It was a very, very close fight. Shevchenko has looked absolutely fantastic. She is a couple judges away from being champ at 135. And when you look at the power differential between 125 and 135 in women's MMA, it's stunning. The fact that she traded punches with Amanda Nunes and to a lot of people won that fight. At 25, she's a murderer. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, we just don't see that very often. So she's going to have the power advantage. She's been busier in the last year. She's physically bigger. She's faster. It's hard to see a way Montano wins this fight. The one thing I would keep in mind is she was also last picked on the Ultimate Fighter and won the friggin' thing. So she needs to pull another miracle to win this. This is Buster Douglas beating Evander Holyfield for the American boxing fans. It's, you had a great upset. You need another one to really be cemented as champion. Yeah.
Obviously, Zabit Magomedsharipov makes his return against Brandon Davis.
Everybody does it, dude.
Almost got
don't
it.
Don't even, you almost got it, man.
Almost. I mean, I was going to say, a bit of a shame that Yair Rodriguez is out of this one, but hey, good on Brandon Davis for stepping up. What, if any, questions are you hoping to have answered about Zabit for yourself this time around? Anything you're curious about? And from what you've seen from him, how far do you think he can go in featherweight? In your eyes, are we looking at a possible future title challenger or even champion somewhere down the line?
When I saw him fight, when I called his fight in Chicago, was it Chicago or New York? His first fight that I called, and I think it was Barclays Center. I think it was in Brooklyn. I called him the future. I go, we're looking at the future right now. This was a guy who was supposed to be on the undercard. I forget which prelim, whether it was the FS1 prelims or I forget which card he's supposed to be on, but he was supposed to be an undercard guy. And I was going, this guy is incredible. So when he made it to the main card, I was thrilled. The thing about him is I think he can be champion because he is – people point to the height of a fighter or the build of a fighter or the range of a fighter and go, oh, that's why he's so good. I can point out someone in every division who was a freak physically who never got it done, who never ended up being great. I mean, some were good fighters. I mean, Gan McGee at heavyweight. I mean, the guy was a giant. Semi Shilk was a giant. These guys had great range, but never outstanding fighters themselves. Kendall Grove at 185 was a freak, 6'6", but he was never, an elite fighter at a contender at 185. Because they're not that athletic. And that's usually the deal, is a guy who's tall, who's rangy, and can keep guys outside, usually isn't that quick. They're not that athletic. They don't scramble that well. They don't have a lot of real power. When you watch Magomedsharipov, that guy moves like a much, much smaller guy. He is crazy fast, great speed, great athleticism, great power. The package he has, like a John Jones, where you go, how is he that athletic with that freaky build? That's how he is, man. So this is a guy, Brandon Davis. The problem with the Davis fight is Davis doesn't, he's a great fighter. He loves to move forward. He's really exciting. I like his style. I like his personality. Great kid. There aren't a lot of X factors to his game. He's pretty much a straightforward brawler with good technique, good footwork, throws good combinations. There are no big X factors that Zabit hasn't seen before. So the pressure on Zabit, in my opinion, is, okay, you have another guy in front of you who's pretty much going to be there to be hit. Can you get him out of there? Because you couldn't do that last time. I was really high on the kid. He clearly won the fight. He did fantastic, but he couldn't get his opponent out of there. So will he kind of turn it up and try to put on more of a show and show everybody that I've arrived? Because Brandon Davis is there to be hit. And so that's kind of my question leading into that fight. But physical talent and ability, the kid has everything.
I feel like there's so many questions to be answered in this event. So many veterans on the card.
Yeah.
Any other fights that you're sort of looking forward to, Jimmy, on the card that sort of have sparked your interest? There's a lot of great guys on there like John Dodson, even the Diego Sanchez that you mentioned.
I would say Dodson Rivera. Dodson Rivera is a big one just because Rivera, there's an interesting behind-the-scenes story. When Rivera fought Marlon Moraes, we all thought that was going 25 minutes. I mean, literally almost to a man in the UFC. When we were talking about that fight, we thought Marlon Moraes with Jimmy Rivera was going to go 25 minutes. And by the time it started, it was like midnight. And remember, 25 minutes on TV is about an hour of actual work for us because, interviews and, in between rounds and all that stuff. So we were like dying by this point. It was a really long night. And when Moraes knocked out Jimmy Rivera, there's this photo of John Anik jumping to his feet, like so excited. And my joke afterward was, you were just happy we were going to bed. And he's like, yeah, that was our joke. Like, we're going to be here for another hour. And then boom, he knocks him out in, 35 seconds or whatever it was. So how Jimmy Rivera bounces back from that is really important. And John Donson is not an easy fight for anybody. That dude's a freak. Very, very fast, quick, great combination. So I'm really looking forward to that fight.
Just literally as we let you go, where are you going to be in this one? Are you going to be on commentary or are you doing the Fox desk for this one?
I'm at home. Watching
nice.
I'm not doing anything. I have nothing to do with it. So I'm going to be at home watching, man, just like you guys.
Any kind of traditions? Do you grab the buffalo wings? Any particular snacks? How does Jimmy Smith enjoy the fights? Or is it literally like walking around in your PJs, no brushed teeth, just like I have a complete day where I can do nothing?
Much that, like it's so rare that I just get to sit down and watch a fight. And like I'm not working the desk, or I'm not studying for a particular fight. So it's so rare that I'm like watching a fight and my brain's not going. So it's kind of fun to just veg, like you're saying. Like I'll get a pizza, sit there, and just like everybody leave me alone. I'm watching this fight. And so yeah, it's pretty rare that I get to do that. But this time, yeah, I'm not on the desk. I'm not doing commentary. I'm literally just sitting there watching.
It's going to be interesting, Jimmy, because I know from my and Casper's perspective, anytime we try and watch fights, people still turn to us to try and give them their own one-on-one breakdowns. So I'm curious to see who's going to be trying to get an exclusive.
Yeah, I have to be really careful who I watch a fight with because I end up like they want commentary. Like why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? I'm like, oh God, like can I get one fight off? So yeah, so a lot of times or it's the other way around. Well, I'll start talking while I'm watching it to whoever's there. I'm like, yeah, he's not passing guard. That's the wrong way. And they'll start like looking at me like he's giving commentary because I start breaking down the fight. I can't help it. It's part of my DNA now.
I hope you watch it alone. I mean that in the nicest way possible. I hope you watch it alone so that no one bothers you. Yeah. All right, guys.
I almost always watch them alone. Yeah.
I hope you get a nice break. You deserve it.
Somebody always talks during the post-fight speeches. Anyway, guys, make sure to follow Jimmy on Twitter at Jimmy Smith MMA, and of course on Instagram at JSmithMMA. Jimmy, we are so grateful to have your awesome analysis on the program today. I think you've opened a lot of people's eyes to how this thing might go down this weekend. We appreciate the time. Thank you so much for coming on to Submission Radio.
Enjoy, guys. Thanks.